She was 8 months pregnant when her husband said 5 words that destroyed her entire world. The dogs sleep inside tonight, you don't. Carolyn Ashford stood in the doorway of her $12 million mansion, watching another woman wear her robe, drink from her favorite mug, and sleep in her bed. Her husband, the man she had given everything to, laughed as she crawled through the rain into a dog kennel. But Garrett Ashford made one fatal mistake. He didn't know who her father was. He didn't know the empire he was about to lose. And he definitely didn't know that the pregnant woman sleeping with the boss that night would be the one to take every single dollar he ever owned. This is a story about betrayal so cruel it will make your blood boil, about karma so perfect it will make you smile, and about a woman who lost everything only to discover she never needed any of it. Stay until the end. Trust me, the revenge is worth every minute. The dogs sleep inside tonight. You don't. The words sliced through the air like a blade dipped in ice. Caroline Ashford stood frozen in the mudroom of her $12 million estate. Rain hammered against the floor-to-ceiling windows with a fury that matched the storm building in her chest. The smell of wet dog fur mixed with the lingering scent of her own perfume. Chanel No. 5, the expensive bottle Garrett had given her for their anniversary. Someone else was wearing it now. Her swollen ankles throbbed from the 3-hour drive home. Her lower back ached with the familiar pain of late pregnancy. 8 months along, 33 weeks and 4 days, to be precise. She had counted every single one. Her husband Garrett blocked the hallway entrance, his arms crossed over his chest, his Italian leather shoes planted firmly on the marble floor, his face arranged in an expression she had never seen before. Cold, dismissive, the face of a stranger wearing her husband's skin. Behind him stood a woman in Carrie's favorite silk robe, the cream-colored one with the hand-stitched roses along the collar and cuffs, a gift from her mother for their 5th anniversary, the one she only wore on special Sunday mornings when she and Garrett would have breakfast in bed. The woman smiled, small, satisfied, the smile of a cat watching a mouse realize there was nowhere left to run. Carrie's hands moved instinctively to her belly, a protective gesture, a maternal reflex. The baby kicked in a response, once, twice, 3 times in rapid succession, as if sensing that something was terribly, fundamentally wrong with the world outside. I don't understand. Carrie heard her own voice and barely recognized it. Thin, reedy, like wind whistling through a cracked window. I was at my mother's house for 3 days. You said the exterminators were coming. You said the house would be fumigated. You said I couldn't come home until Thursday because of the chemicals. Plans changed. Garrett checked his watch. The Rolex Submariner she had given him for their 5th anniversary. The one that had cost $15,000. The one she had saved for by skipping lunches and walking to work instead of taking cabs for 6 straight months. He didn't even glance up as he spoke. Brianna has moved in. The master suite is hers now. Brianna, the name registered slowly, like a word in a foreign language that takes a moment to translate. Brianna Vale, Garrett's executive assistant of 3 years, the woman with the perfect blonde highlights in the designer wardrobe and the laugh that always seemed a little too loud at company parties. The woman who had helped Carrie plan the nursery just 2 months ago, who had flipped on through paint samples and furniture catalogs, who had suggested the sage green color for the walls. The woman who had picked out the crib where Carrie's daughter would sleep. This is a joke. Carrie heard herself speak but felt completely disconnected from her own mouth. Like watching a movie of someone else's life. You're punishing me for something. Just tell me what I did wrong. Whatever it is, we can fix it. We can work through it together. That's what marriage is. Brianna yawned, actually yawned, her jaw stretched wide. Her perfect white teeth gleamed in the soft hallway lighting. Her manicured hand didn't even bother to cover her mouth. Garrett, honey. Brianna's voice was smooth as poisoned honey. I'm absolutely exhausted from all the moving today. Can we wrap this up already? I really want to take a long bath and relax, honey. She called him honey. In Carrie's house. Wearing Carrie's robe. Standing in Carrie's hallway. Using Carrie's pet name for the man Carrie had married 7 years ago. The room tilted slightly. The edges of Carrie's vision went gray and fuzzy. She grabbed the doorframe for support. Her fingers dug into the painted wood hard enough to leave marks. Garrett sighed. The heavy, put-upon sigh of a man dealing with an inconvenience. He gestured toward the back door with a casual wave of his hand. Through the glass panels, the outdoor kennel was visible in the darkness. The heated doghouse she had insisted on building for their two German shepherds, Bruno and Max. Rain sheeted across the concrete run in silver curtains. Lightning flickered on the horizon. Thunder rumbled like the growl of some enormous beast. "The kennel is insulated," Garrett said, his voice flat, bored, matter of fact, as if discussing where to order Chinese takeout. "You'll be fine out there for tonight. The dogs will keep you warm. Tomorrow morning we can discuss arrangements for you to collect your things and find somewhere else to live." "You cannot possibly be serious." Carrie's voice cracked on the words, splintered like thin ice under too much weight. "Garrett, look at me. I am 8 months pregnant. 8 months pregnant with your daughter. Our daughter. The child we made together. The child we planned for. The child you said you wanted more than anything in the world. Which is exactly why I'm being so generous." He stepped forward. She stepped backward, an instinctive retreat. The doggy door flapped in the wind behind her, letting in bursts of cold, wet air. "You could be sleeping in your car right now, but I'm giving you shelter. Warmth. The dogs will keep you company. Most people would consider that quite charitable under the circumstances." Brianna giggled. The sound was high and sharp. It cut through the drumming rain like a knife through silk. "Garrett, please." Carrie hated the pleading that crept into her voice, hated how small and desperate she sounded. "This is my home. Our home. We built this life together. We chose every piece of furniture together. We planted the garden together. We talked about raising our children here. I built this life." His eyes were cold, flat, like stones at the bottom of a frozen lake in the dead of winter. "You just lived in it. You spent my money and decorated my house and played at being a wife. But you never contributed anything real, anything that mattered. Now get outside before I call security and have them remove you by force." The back door opened. Wind rushed in. Cold, wet, carrying the smell of rain and fresh-cut grass and the bunk's cedar chip bedding. Carrie stumbled backward onto the patio. Her pregnant belly threw off her balance. She caught herself on the railing just before she fell. The door slammed shut behind her. The lock clicked. Loud. Final. The sound of her old life ending. Through the rain-streaked glass, she watched Garrett take Brianna's hand. She watched him lift it to his lips and kiss her knuckles. She watched Brianna laugh and lean into him. She watched them walk down the hallway toward the master bedroom. Her bedroom. Her husband. Her life. Gone. She stood in the rain for exactly 47 seconds. She counted each one. An old habit from childhood. Count when you're separated. Count when you're sad. Count until the feelings become manageable. The cold soaked through her silk blouse in seconds, plastered her carefully styled hair to her face and neck, ran down her spine and pooled in her bra. Her designer maternity pants grew heavy with water. Her Italian leather flats filled and squelched with every tiny movement. The baby kicked again. Harder this time. More urgent. A demand for attention, a reminder that there were two lives at stake now, not just one. "Move, Carrie." The thought cut through her shock like a lighthouse beam through fog. "You have to move, or you'll both freeze to death out here." She walked toward the kennel. Each step was a battle. Her designer flats sank into the mud. The heels caught and stuck. She had to grip the chain-link fence to stay upright, to keep from falling face first into the muck. Bruno and Max were already there, waiting for her at the kennel gate. The two German shepherds whined and circled her legs, their warm, solid bodies pressed against her thighs. Their wet noses nudged her hands with anxious devotion. "Good boys." She managed to whisper the words through chattering teeth. "At least you two still love me. At least someone in this house still cares whether I live or die." The doghouse entrance was small, 3 feet high at most, 2 feet wide, designed for large dogs to enter comfortably, not for heavily pregnant women to crawl through. Carrie lowered herself to her hands and knees. The concrete was cold and rough. It scraped her palms and tore small holes in her pants. Her swollen belly hung low, nearly brushing the ground as she crawled forward inch by inch. Inside, the doghouse was dark and close. It smelled like kibble and warm dog fur and cedar shavings. A heat lamp glowed orange in the far corner, providing just enough warmth to keep the dogs comfortable on cold nights. Straw covered the wooden floor, scratchy against her wet clothes. She pulled herself into a sitting position with difficulty, her back pressed against the wooden wall. Her knees drew up as far as her pregnant belly would allow. Her silk blouse clung to her skin. Her teeth wouldn't stop chattering. Bruno crawled in beside her. Then Max. They curled around her like living blankets. Their body heat soaked through her wet clothes slowly. Their hearts beat steady and strong against her legs. Carrie pulled out her phone from her pants pocket with shaking fingers. The screen lit up her face with pale blue light, illuminated the tears she hadn't realized were streaming down her cheeks. No signal. She tried again, moved the phone around the small space, held it up toward the ventilation hole cut into the wooden ceiling. Still nothing. Not a single bar. Garrett had insisted on installing the cell signal blocker last month, a state-of-the-art system that covered the entire property. For security purposes, he had explained, to prevent corporate espionage, to protect their privacy from hackers and eavesdroppers, to trap her, she understood now, to ensure she couldn't call for help when he finally revealed his true intentions. She checked the phone again, 3 times. Lock, unlock, lock, unlock, lock. A compulsive ritual, a desperate, foolish hope that somehow, magically, the bars would appear and she could call her parents or Dina or the police or anyone at all. They never did. Through the small opening of the doghouse, she could see the mansion looming against the stormy sky, could see her bedroom window on the 2nd floor, could see the warm yellow light spilling out into the darkness. As she watched, the light went out. Garrett was going to bed, with another woman, in the bed Carrie had chosen, on the sheets Carrie had picked out, under the comforter Carrie had ordered from an exclusive designer in Milan. While his pregnant wife slept with the dogs in a kennel outside, the baby kicked. Carrie placed both hands on her belly, felt her daughter moving, felt the small elbows and knees pressing against her palm. "I'm sorry." She whispered the words into the darkness, her voice cracking. "I'm so sorry, Grace. Mommy didn't know. Mommy had no idea he was capable of something like this." But even as she said the words, a small, treacherous voice in the back of her mind disagreed. The signs were there. They were always there. You chose not to see them. The late nights at the office that started 6 months ago. The canceled date nights. The weekend business trips that seemed to multiply. The way he looked at his phone and smiled at texts that definitely weren't from her. The business conferences that happened to coincide with Brianna's vacation days. She had explained it all away. Work stress, career demands, the pressure of running a growing tech company, the responsibilities of providing for a family. She had been so stupid, so naive, so willfully blind to what was happening right in front of her face. The rain drummed on the doghouse roof like 1,000 tiny fingers tapping. Bruno licked her hand with a warm, wet tongue. Max rested his heavy head on her ankle with a sigh. Somewhere in the mansion, her husband was sleeping with another woman in her bed. And Carolyn Ashford was finally waking up from the dream she had been living for 7 years. The night stretched on forever. Each hour felt like 10. Each minute felt like an hour. The heat lamp kept the worst of the cold away, but it couldn't warm the ice that was forming in her chest. Couldn't thaw the frozen numbness spreading through her heart. At some point, she must have slept, because suddenly gray light was filtering through the doghouse entrance. Dawn. The rain had stopped sometime during the night. Birds were chirping in the oak trees near the garden wall. Her back screamed in protest as she tried to move. Her neck had locked into an agonizing position. Her legs had gone completely numb under the weight of the dogs. But worst of all was the silence from her belly. The baby hadn't moved in over 2 hours. "Grace," Carrie pressed her hands against her stomach with desperate urgency. "Come on, baby. Move for mommy. Please, just one little kick. That's all I need." Nothing. Panic clawed at her throat with sharp, cold fingers. She pushed Bruno aside and crawled out of the doghouse as fast as her exhausted body would allow. She stood on shaking legs in the cool morning mist. Her wet clothes had partially dried overnight, leaving her clammy and stiff. The baby had to be okay. She had to be okay. If something had happened because of the stress, because of the quad, because of what Garrett had done to them, Carrie would never forgive herself. Never. "Please." She whispered the word like a prayer. "Please be okay. Please move. Please let me know you're still in there." A door opened behind her. The sound of hinges creaking cut through the morning silence. Carrie spun around, her heart hammering. Rosemary Dalton stood on the back patio, the housekeeper of 15 years. A woman in her late 50s with silver-streaked hair and kind eyes. A woman who had watched Carrie's wedding from the kitchen window. Who had made her ginger soup when she had terrible morning sickness. Who had knitted tiny yellow booties for the baby shower last month. Rosemary's weathered face crumbled, like wet paper at the sight of her. "Oh my God." Her voice broke on the words, shattered into pieces. "Oh, Mrs. Ashford. Oh, honey, what has he done to you?" She rushed forward across the wet grass, wrapped Carrie in a wool blanket that smelled like lavender and safety and home. Led her gently toward the small gardener's cottage at the far edge of the property. Away from the mansion, away from Garrett, away from the woman wearing Carrie's robe. But before they reached the cottage, Carrie looked back one final time. Through the bedroom window, she could see Brianna standing there, silhouetted against the morning light, holding Carrie's favorite coffee mug, the one with the hand-painted roses that matched the robe, smiling. And at that moment, deep in Carrie's belly, the baby kicked. Once, twice, strong and defiant, as if to say, "I'm still here, Mama, and we're going to get through this together." The gardener's cottage was small but warm, a single room with whitewashed walls and exposed wooden beams. A space heater hummed steadily in the corner, pushing back the morning chill. The smell of instant coffee and lavender sachets filled the air. Rosemary pressed a chipped ceramic mug into Carrie's trembling hands. Steam rose from the dark liquid in lazy spirals. "Drink," the older woman commanded gently. "You need something hot inside you. Your lips are practically blue." Carrie obeyed without thinking. The coffee was bitter and far too strong. It burned her tongue and scorched her throat on the way down. She didn't care. She drank it anyway. Felt the warmth spread through her frozen chest inch by inch. Rosemary sat across from her on a creaky wooden chair, her weathered hands twisted in her lap like nervous birds. Her eyes kept darting toward the cottage window, toward the big house looming in the distance, toward whatever dark secrets still lurked inside those walls. The silence stretched between them, thin, fragile, ready to shatter. "How long?" Carrie finally broke it. Her voice came out hoarse and raw, like gravel scraping across sandpaper. "How long has this been happening? How long has she been in my house, in my bed, with my husband?" Rosemary didn't answer. She stared down at her lap, at her twisting hands. "Rosemary." Carrie set down the coffee cup. It clinked against the saucer with a sound like a tiny bell. "Please, I need to know the truth. I deserve to know." A long, painful pause. The heater hummed. The wind rustled leaves against the cottage window. Somewhere in the distance, a bird sang its morning song. 6 months. Rosemary finally whispered the words. "Maybe longer. I only became certain about 6 months ago. But looking back, I think it started before that." 6 months. The words landed like physical blows, one after another, pounding into Carrie's chest with the force of hammer strikes. 6 months ago, she had still believed her marriage was happy. 6 months ago, she had discovered she was pregnant after 2 years of trying. 6 months ago, she had cried tears of pure joy and rushed to show Garrett the positive test. He had hugged her so tight she could barely breathe, had lifted her off her feet and spun her around the living room, had laughed with what she thought was genuine happiness. "Best news of my life," he had said, his voice thick with emotion. "We're going to be a real family now, everything I've ever wanted, and the whole time he was sleeping with someone else, the whole time he was planning this betrayal, the whole time he was waiting for the right moment to throw her away." The baby kicked again, strong this time, insistent. Carrie burst into tears. Not delicate, dignified crying, great, racking sobs that shook her entire body. Ugly crying that made her face red and swollen. The kind of crying that came from a place so deep it felt like her soul was being ripped out through her chest. Rosemary moved to sit beside her on the narrow cot, wrapped an arm around her shaking shoulders. Let her cry into the wool blanket until it was soaked through with tears. Let her sob until her throat was raw and her eyes were nearly swollen shut. "I didn't tell you because I couldn't." Rosemary's voice was thick with her own grief. "He made me sign papers. A confidentiality agreement. He said if I breathed a word to anyone, he would fire me without severance and make sure I never worked in this town again. He threatened to report me for theft, to ruin my reputation completely. She paused, swallowed hard. I've worked here for 15 years, Mrs. Ashford. This job is all I have. My pension, my health insurance, my entire future depends on this position. I'm 58 years old. Who would hire me if he blackballed me? Carrie understood. She wanted to be angry, wanted to blame someone other than herself, wanted to direct this tsunami of rage and grief and betrayal at a target she could actually reach. But she understood. Garrett was very, very good at trapping people, at making them complicit in their own imprisonment, at ensuring their silence through fear and manipulation. He had done it to Rosemary. He had done it to Carrie. He had probably done it to others they didn't even know about. When the tears finally subsided, Carrie sat up slowly, wiped her face with the corner of the damp blanket, took a deep, shuddering breath that rattled in her chest. "Tell me everything," she said. Her voice was steadier now, harder. "Don't leave anything out. I need to know exactly what I'm dealing with." So Rosemary told her. She told her about the late-night visits that started in the spring, about Brianna arriving through the side entrance after dark, about the closed-door meetings in Garrett's private study that went on for hours. She told her about the lingerie delivered in unmarked brown boxes, about the receipt she found when emptying the trash. Victoria's Secret, $3,000, sizes that definitely weren't Carrie's. She told her about the jewelry, a diamond tennis bracelet that cost more than Rosemary made in 3 months, ruby drop earrings from Cartier, a sapphire pendant from Tiffany's that probably cost more than Rosemary made in an entire year. She told her about the cars, a white Mercedes convertible delivered to the house one Tuesday afternoon, a red Porsche for weekend drives, both registered to Brianna Vale, both paid for with Garrett's money. And then she showed her the receipts. Rosemary had been collecting them in secret, hiding them in a shoebox under her narrow bed in the servants' quarters, waiting for the right moment, the right opportunity to do something with the damning evidence. Here. She pressed the battered shoebox into Carrie's trembling hands. "I documented everything I could. Dates, amounts, account numbers, photographs when I could manage it without being caught. I didn't know what else to do." Carrie opened the box with numb fingers. Her hands were steadier now. The shock was beginning to harden into something else, something colder, something with sharp edges. She flipped through the papers one by one. Credit card statements covered in yellow highlighter, bank transfer records with suspicious amounts circled in red pen, jewelry store receipts with prices that made her stomach turn. And then she saw it. An invoice from Custom Nursery Designs Incorporated, dated exactly 3 months ago. Itemized list of services rendered. Initial consultation with Ms. Brianna Vale, client representative. Design concept presentation and approval by Ms. Vale. Color palette selection, sage green per Ms. Vale's specific preference. Crib style and placement selected by Ms. Vale. Woodland mural design approved by Ms. Vale. Final walkthrough and approval conducted with Ms. Vale. The paper shook violently in Carrie's hands. She designed the nursery. Her voice was barely a whisper, barely audible above the humming heater. She picked out everything. The paint color, the crib where my daughter will sleep, the mural on the walls, she chose it all. Rosemary nodded slowly. Her face twisted with grief and guilt. "He brought her to the house while you were away at your sister's baby shower in Boston. They spent over 3 hours in the nursery together, walking around, measuring, discussing options, laughing." She paused. Her voice dropped even lower. "I heard her say something through the door. She said it was going to be her room too someday soon, that she couldn't wait to move in permanently, that she had always wanted to be a mother. Her room. Brianna thought the nursery would be hers, thought the baby would be hers, thought she could simply step into Carrie's life and take everything. The house, the husband, the child." Carrie stood up so fast the wool blanket tumbled to the floor. Her vision narrowed to a single dark tunnel. Black spots danced at the edges of her sight. She barely made it to the tiny bathroom in time. She dropped to her knees on the cracked tile floor, gripped the porcelain toilet bowl with both hands, emptied her stomach completely. Every bite of the dinner she had eaten at her mother's house the night before, every sip of the terrible coffee, everything. She knelt there for a long time afterward, forehead pressed against the cool porcelain, body shaking with dry heaves that produced nothing but bile. This wasn't happening. This couldn't possibly be happening. She had done everything right, followed all the rules, married the successful, handsome man, built the beautiful, perfect home, created the life she had always dreamed of having. And it was all a lie, every single moment of it. A carefully constructed fantasy designed to keep her docile and compliant while her husband betrayed her in every possible way. Eventually, she pulled herself upright, flushed the toilet, rinsed her mouth at the tiny sink, splashed ice-cold water on her face until her cheeks stung. The woman staring back from the cloudy mirror looked like a stranger. Red-rimmed eyes, blotchy, swollen skin, and hair tangled and matted from the rain. A haunted expression that aged her 10 years in a single night. I am not crazy. She spoke the words aloud, to herself, to her reflection, to anyone who might be listening. I know what I saw. I know what he did. I am not imagining this. She said it again, louder, more forceful. I am not crazy. This is really happening. My husband betrayed me in the worst possible way, and I am going to survive it. I am going to get through this, for myself and for my daughter. The baby kicked, once, twice, strong and reassuring. Agreement, solidarity, a tiny vote of confidence from the one person who couldn't abandon her. When Carrie walked back toward the main house 20 minutes later, she still didn't know exactly what she was going to do. She just knew she couldn't hide in the gardener's cottage forever. Couldn't pretend the situation would magically resolve itself. The front door was unlocked when she tried the handle. Inside, the mansion smelled like bacon frying and fresh brewed coffee and expensive French perfume. Carrie's perfume. The Chanel No. 5 she saved for special occasions. Someone else was wearing it now. Someone who had stolen everything else that belonged to Carrie. Brianna Vale lounged on the imported Italian leather sofa in the great room. Carrie's cashmere cardigan hung open over a silk negligee that definitely didn't come from Carrie's closet. Carrie's wedding china held a half-eaten breakfast. Eggs Benedict with perfectly runny yolks. Fresh seasonal fruit arranged in an artistic pattern. Flaky croissants from the French bakery that charged $18 for a single pastry. Brianna didn't bother looking up from her phone as Carrie entered. Oh good, you're finally awake. She scrolled through what looked like a social media feed with one perfectly manicured finger. Her nails were red, the exact shade of the Porsche in the garage. Garrett left instructions before he went to the office. He says you can pack one suitcase with essentials. Someone will bring it to wherever you end up going. This is my house. Carrie was surprised by the steadiness that had crept into her voice, the ice that had formed around her words. Actually, sweetie, Brianna finally deigned to meet her eyes. Her gaze was cold, amused, superior in a way that made Carrie's skin crawl. It's in his name, exclusively his name. I had my lawyer check the deed myself last week. You have absolutely nothing, no claim to this property whatsoever, just like you have no claim to anything else in this marriage. The words hit their intended mark, because Carrie knew with sickening certainty that the woman was absolutely right. When they had bought this house 4 years ago, Garrett had handled everything, the paperwork, the lawyers, the closing, the endless documents that needed signatures. Just sign here, darling, he had said with his charming smile. And here, don't worry about reading all that boring legal language. I'll take care of everything. That's what husbands are for. She had trusted him, signed without reading, believed that what was his was also hers, believed that marriage meant partnership, believed that love meant honesty. She had been so painfully, catastrophically naive. You need to leave now, Brianna continued. She set down her phone and picked up her coffee cup. Sipped delicately, the picture of a woman completely in control of her domain. Garrett has an important video conference call with investors in about an hour. He doesn't want you lurking around in the background when they see the feed. It would raise awkward questions. Carrie stood absolutely still. The grandfather clock in the hallway ticked. The refrigerator hummed in the kitchen. Somewhere upstairs, a shower turned on and began to run. Garrett was getting ready for his day, his normal, ordinary day, as if nothing at all had changed, as if he hadn't locked his pregnant wife outside with the dogs in a thunderstorm. I gave him everything. Carrie heard the words leave her mouth. They sounded hollow, distant, like they belonged to someone else. I gave up my career for him, my independence, my friends, my dreams. I gave him 7 years of my life, the best years, and this is how he repays me. Brianna examined her manicured nails with exaggerated boredom. That sounds like a you problem, sweetie. Her lips curved into a smile that didn't reach her cold eyes. Should have read the fine print before you signed your life away. The dismissal was so casual, so complete, so utterly without remorse or empathy. Carrie felt something shift deep inside her chest. A tectonic plate moving, a fault line cracking. Not breaking, not anymore. Hardening. I'm going to go upstairs and pack my things now, Carrie said. Her voice was calm, controlled, eerily steady, and then I am going to leave this house. But I want you to understand something very clearly, Brianna. She took one step forward, then another. This is not over. This will never be over. You think you've won something here. You think you've taken my place, but you have no idea what you've actually done, and you have no idea who you're really dealing with. Brianna's smile flickered. Just for a second, a tiny crack in her armor of superiority. Is that supposed to be a threat? It's a promise. Carrie held her gaze without blinking. The only promise I intend to keep from this marriage. She turned and walked toward the stairs. Her bare feet were silent on the cold marble. Her hand was steady on the mahogany banister. Behind her, Brianna's voice called out one more time. Sweet as antifreeze, poisonous as arsenic. Oh, by the way, the nursery colors were my idea. Sage green, very trendy right now, very sophisticated. I'm sure your daughter is going to absolutely love what I picked out for her room. Carrie kept walking. Didn't turn around, didn't respond. But inside, where no one could see, the ice continued to form, because Brianna Vale didn't know the most important thing about Caroline Mitchell Ashford. She didn't know who Carrie's father was, what he had built, what he was capable of. And that ignorance was going to prove to be a very, very expensive mistake. The phone call lasted exactly 11 seconds. Carrie sat on the edge of the narrow cot in Rosemary's cottage. Her single suitcase rested at her feet. Everything she had been allowed to take from 7 years of marriage packed into 37 pounds of luggage. Photographs, jewelry that had been gifts from her parents, a few changes of clothes. The baby blanket her mother had crocheted, a copy of her wedding album that she didn't even know why she wanted anymore. Her entire life reduced to one bag. Daddy. Her voice cracked on the word, splintered like thin ice. I need help. Walter Mitchell didn't ask questions, didn't demand explanations, didn't waste time on words that wouldn't change anything. He simply said 2 words in his deep, gravelly voice. I'm coming. 3 hours and 47 minutes later, a black Cadillac Escalade pulled through the estate's wrought iron gates. The windows were tinted so dark you couldn't see inside. The license plate read Mitchell 1 in bold silver letters. Walter Mitchell stepped out of the passenger side door before the vehicle had fully stopped. He was 62 years old, 6'3" and built like a retired linebacker. Hands like catcher's mitts, scarred and calloused from decades of construction work in his younger years. Eyes like a winter lake in January, blue and cold and impossibly deep. Walter Mitchell had built Mitchell Construction from absolutely nothing. Had started 40 years ago with a single-use backhoe and a dented pickup truck with 200,000 miles on the odometer. Now his company employed over 3,000 people across 6 southwestern states, owned warehouses and distribution centers and shipping fleets that spanned the entire region. He had taught his daughter to read legal contracts before she could read picture books, had made her study business terminology while other children learned nursery rhymes. Never sign anything you haven't read twice, he always told her, and never trust anyone who tells you not to bother reading. She should have listened. God, she should have listened. Carolyn, Walter crossed the gravel driveway in 4 long, purposeful strides, took her tear-stained face in his rough, calloused hands, looked at her swollen eyes, her tangled, unwashed hair, the mud stains still visible on her knees from crawling into the doghouse, his jaw set like concrete hardening in the sun. Where is he? It wasn't a question. It was a demand. 20 minutes later, Garrett met them in his private study. He had clearly been expecting this confrontation, had prepared for it. He sat behind his massive mahogany desk in a $3,000 custom-tailored suit. His posture was relaxed, confident, the picture of a man who believed himself untouchable. His lawyer, a thin man named Bradford with wire-rimmed glasses and a permanent sneer, sat in the leather chair beside him, briefcase open, legal pad ready, recording device on the desk between them. "We're documenting this conversation for legal purposes," Bradford announced. "Any statements made here may be used in subsequent proceedings." Walter didn't acknowledge the lawyer's existence, didn't sit in the chair that had been positioned for him. Instead, he stood with his back to the floor-to-ceiling windows, his massive frame silhouetted against the morning light, his arms crossed over his barrel chest, his shadow falling across the desk like a prophecy of things to come. "You made my pregnant daughter sleep in a dog kennel." Garrett's smile was thin, practiced, the smooth, polished smile of a businessman who had negotiated hundreds of deals, who had never lost a negotiation in his life. "Walter," he spread his hands in a gesture of false reasonableness, "I understand you're upset. Any father would be. But this is really a private matter between husband and wife. There's history here that you're not aware of." He leaned back in his leather chair. "Caroline has a history of emotional instability," he continued, his voice dripping with manufactured concern. "The pregnancy has been extremely difficult for her. Mood swings, irrational behavior, paranoid accusations. We consulted with specialists who recommended some time apart for her own well-being." The lies flowed from his mouth so smoothly, so naturally, like water from a spring, as if he had rehearsed this speech 100 times in front of a mirror. Carrie stood in the doorway watching, her hands clenched into fists at her sides. Every word from her husband's mouth was a fresh knife wound, but she stayed silent. Her father had told her to let him handle this, to trust the process. So she watched. "We thought some time apart might be beneficial," Garrett continued. "Give her space to clear her head. The kennel was simply the most practical, temporary solution available on short notice." Walter hadn't moved an inch, hadn't blinked. His expression remained utterly, terrifyingly still. "Your tech company," he said finally, his voice flat, conversational. "What's it called again?" "Ashford Dynamics." "Right." Garrett's smile flickered. Just slightly, a single crack in the facade. "Ashford Dynamics. Impressive operation. Very impressive. How many contracts do you have with federal government agencies right now?" The lawyer shifted uncomfortably in his chair. The recording device suddenly seemed very loud in the quiet room. "I don't see how that's relevant to the current discussion," Garrett said. "Humor me." A pause. Garrett's fingers began tapping his desk, a nervous habit Carrie had noticed years ago. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 12 federal contracts currently active, worth approximately $47 million annually. Walter nodded slowly, like a teacher acknowledging a student's correct answer. "And those federal contracts," he continued, "they have certain requirements, don't they? Security requirements, vetting requirements. You need secure supply chains, vetted warehouses, reliable transportation with background-checked personnel. We have established partnerships in place that meet all federal standards. You have my partnerships in place." Walter's voice remained calm, pleasant even, as if discussing the weather or the score of last night's baseball game. 83% of your logistics requirements flow through Mitchell distribution networks. My trucking fleets, my warehouses, my people." Garrett's smile vanished completely. "Additionally," Walter continued, "there's that property development you're so proud of, the one in Henderson County. Nice project, 200 luxury condominiums, very ambitious for a tech company branching into real estate. What about it? Construction permits flow through the county planning office." Walter examined his fingernails. Rough, scarred, the hands of a man who had actually built things with his own two hands, not just shuffled papers and manipulated spreadsheets. "I've known Commissioner Reynolds for going on 30 years now. Our granddaughters attend the same private school. We play golf together every second Sunday." "You're bluffing. I'm explaining." Walter looked up, met Garrett's eyes for the first time since entering the room. His gaze was the cold blue of a glacier, the kind of cold that could freeze a man's blood solid. "One phone call, son. That's all it would take. Construction halts indefinitely for 18 months of environmental impact review. Your investors panic. Your loans come due. Your whole house of cards comes tumbling down around your ears." The study went completely silent. The grandfather clock in the hallway ticked. Outside the window, a gardener's truck rumbled past. A bird sang somewhere in the ornamental trees. Garrett's lawyer leaned over, whispered something urgent in his ear. Garrett shook his head sharply. His face had gone pale beneath his artificial tan. "What exactly do you want, Walter?" Walter smiled. It was the smile of a wolf watching a rabbit realize it had wandered into the wrong meadow. "I'm a patient man," he said. "I've learned patience over 62 years of building things that last. So here's what's going to happen. I'm going to give you 30 days. 30 days for what? To reconcile with my daughter." Walter began ticking items off on his thick fingers. "To enroll in marriage counseling with a licensed therapist. To remove that woman from this house permanently. To begin acting like the husband you promised to be when you stood at that altar 7 years ago. And if I refuse, then I'm going to spend the next 30 days finding every skeleton in your closet, every offshore account, every dirty deal, every shortcut in ethical violation." Walter turned toward the door. Carrie stepped aside to let him pass. "And when I take you down, son, it won't just hurt. It will be total, complete, absolute. You won't have a dollar left to your name or a friend left in this city." He paused at the threshold, looked back one final time. 30 days. Use them wisely. The door closed behind them with a soft, final click. In the Escalade, heading away from the estate, Carrie finally allowed herself to exhale. "He won't do it," she said. Her voice was tired, hollow. "He won't reconcile. You saw his face. He's already made his choice." Walter stared out the tinted window at the passing landscape. His expression revealed nothing. "I know," he said simply. "Then why give him 30 days? Because in 30 days, I'll have found every piece of ammunition I need." Walter turned to look at his daughter. His eyes softened, just slightly, just enough for her to see the father behind the businessman. Every hidden account, every buried secret, every person he's betrayed who might be willing to talk. He reached over and took her hand. His calloused palm was warm against her cold fingers. "When I take him down, sweetheart, it won't just hurt. It will be complete and permanent. He will lose everything he cares about. His money, his status, his reputation, everything." Carrie nodded slowly. She knew she should feel satisfied by this promise, should feel hope rising in her chest. Instead, she just felt empty, hollow, like someone had scooped out her insides and left nothing but a shell. They drove to her parents' estate outside the city, a sprawling ranch-style house on 40 acres of rolling hills, the house where Carrie had grown up, the house she had left when she married Garrett at 25 years old, full of dreams and certainty and foolish, foolish hope. Her childhood bedroom was exactly as she had left it 7 years ago. Concert posters on the lavender walls, academic trophies on the white bookshelf, photographs tucked into the frame of the vanity mirror, photographs of her and Garrett, their first date at the Italian restaurant downtown, their engagement party at his parents' country club, their wedding day, when she had been so certain that happily ever after was guaranteed. She couldn't sleep that night. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Garrett's cold face, Brianna's cruel smile, the doghouse entrance looming in the darkness. At 2:17 in the morning, she finally gave up trying. She got out of bed, walked barefoot to her childhood closet, opened the door. Everything was still there, waiting for her, a museum of the girl she used to be. Stuffed animals from when she was small enough to need them, report cards from elementary school covered in gold stars, yearbooks from high school filled with messages from friends she had lost touch with, and a box in the corner, white cardboard, dusty from years of neglect, her wedding album. She pulled it out with trembling hands, sat cross-legged on the closet floor, her pregnant belly resting on her thighs, opened it slowly, carefully, like diffusing a bomb. There she was on the first page, 25 years old, radiant in white silk and antique lace, her mother's veil trailing behind her, a bouquet of white roses and baby's breath clutched in her shaking hands. She had been so happy, so certain, so completely, utterly blind. There he was beside her, handsome in his perfectly tailored tuxedo, his arm around her waist possessively, the perfect groom for the perfect bride. She turned the pages one by one. The ceremony under the rose-covered arch. The exchange of rings. The first kiss as husband and wife. The reception in the candle-lit ballroom. The first dance to their song. The cake cutting where he had smeared frosting on her nose and made her laugh. The bouquet toss. The garter removal. The sparkler send-off as they ran toward the waiting limousine. Happy memories. Beautiful memories. Memories she had treasured for 7 years. All of them poisoned now. Tainted by betrayal, ruined by lies. She touched the photograph of the man she thought she had married. The man who had promised to love her, to honor her, to cherish her in sickness and health until death do them part. The man who had made his pregnant wife sleep outside with Antoine while his mistress took her place. The tears came again. Silent this time. No sobbing, no wailing, just an endless stream rolling down her cheeks and dripping onto the glossy album pages. She cried until the sky outside her window turned gray with approaching dawn, until her body ached from sitting on the hard floor, until her eyes were so swollen she could barely see. Then she closed the album, put it back into the box, pushed the box to the very back of the closet where she would never have to look at it again, and walked away. Some things couldn't be saved. Some memories weren't worth preserving. Some people weren't worth crying over. Not anymore. Not ever again. Garrett's counterattack launched exactly when Walter had predicted it would. 3 days after the confrontation in the study, just long enough for him to believe he had regained the upper hand, just long enough for him to grow confident in his own cleverness. The social media post appeared at precisely 9:15 on a Tuesday morning. A photograph dominated the top of the post. Carrie, clearly pregnant, being escorted from the property by 2 uniformed security guards. Her hair was a mess of tangles. Her eyes were red and swollen. Her clothes were wrinkled and stained. She looked unhinged, unstable, exactly like the madwoman Garrett wanted the world to see. The caption beneath the photo was a masterpiece of manipulation. Sometimes the hardest part of loving someone is letting them get the help they need. I'm asking for privacy during this incredibly difficult time as we navigate my wife's unexpected mental health challenges. Pregnancy can affect women in ways that are impossible to predict or understand. Caroline is getting the professional care she requires. Please send your positive thoughts and prayers to our growing family during this challenging period. Hashtag mental health awareness. Hashtag pregnancy struggles. Hashtag standing by her side. The comments flooded in within minutes. So brave of him to speak out publicly about something so private. Poor Garrett. What a nightmare to deal with a mentally unstable wife. Maybe she was always crazy and just hid it well. Some women simply cannot handle pregnancy hormones. It's not their fault. I knew something was off about her at the charity gala last year, praying for that innocent baby. At least the father seemed stable. Dina Patterson's phone call came at 9:42. Do not look at social media right now. She said it instead of hello. Her voice was urgent, commanding. Are you looking at social media right now, Carrie? I'm looking at social media. Damn it, Carrie. Stop immediately. It's going to make you spiral into a very dark place. But Carrie couldn't stop. Her thumb kept scrolling. Up, down, up, down. Each comment was a tiny blade slicing into her skin. Each like was a small betrayal from people who claimed to be friends. People she had known for years were sharing the post, adding their own commentary, expressing concern that seemed rehearsed, performative, designed to align themselves with the obvious winner of this public relations battle. I always suspected something was a little off about her personality. Remember when she got so irrationally upset at the charity auction? Garrett is such a patient saint for standing by her through this. I heard she had issues with emotional regulation before the pregnancy too. The phone buzzed constantly in her hand. Text after text, rolling in like waves breaking on a shore. Hey, I just saw the post. Are you doing okay? Is it true what Garrett wrote about you? I'm here if you need to talk about what's going on. And then there were the worst ones. The messages from people who went completely silent, who read Garrett's carefully crafted narrative and decided his version must be the truth, who chose his side without ever bothering to ask for hers. The absence of support was somehow worse than the active attacks. Dina arrived at her parents' house shortly after noon. She brought a bottle of expensive red wine that Carrie couldn't drink because of the pregnancy in a fury that Carrie desperately wished she could borrow. That manipulative, gaslighting piece of absolute garbage. Dina scrolled through her own phone with barely contained rage. Her jaw was tight. Her dark eyes blazed with protective anger. Half of these supportive comments are from accounts that were created within the last week. Look at this one. 7 total followers. Joined the platform last Tuesday. 4 posts, all expressing support for Garrett. What exactly are you saying? I'm saying your husband is running a coordinated disinformation campaign against his own pregnant wife. Dina threw her phone down on the bed in disgust. Fake accounts. Coordinated messaging. Manufactured consensus. This is professional-grade reputation destruction. Someone is being paid very good money to destroy your public image. Carrie stared at the ceiling of her childhood bedroom, the same ceiling she had stared at as a teenager, back when her biggest problem was whether Billy Henderson would ask her to prom, back when she still believed in happily ever after and true love conquering all. I gave him absolutely everything, she said. Her voice was hollow, empty, the voice of a woman watching her entire life collapse around her. I quit my job when we got married. He said he wanted to take care of me, said he wanted me to focus entirely on building our home and our future family together. He wanted to trap you. Dina's voice was soft and hard at the same time. Make you completely dependent on him. Isolate you from your own identity and your own capabilities. The words settled into Carrie's bones. Heavy, true, undeniable. She had been an architect before Garrett, a good one. 7 years at Morrison and Associates, one of the most prestigious firms in the city. She had been on the junior partner track, had won design awards, had been featured in industry magazines. Then Garrett swept into her life with his charm and his money and his grand romantic gestures. Swept her off her feet like a prince in a fairy tale. You're far too talented to work for someone else, he had told her on their honeymoon. Take a break from all that stress. Enjoy being my wife for a while. We have all the time in the world to figure out the rest. 7 years later, she had no income, no current resume, no professional network, no identity outside of being Mrs. Garrett Ashford. She had absolutely nothing that was truly hers. The phone kept buzzing. Notification after notification after notification. Carrie picked it up with trembling fingers. Checked it again. Lock, unlock, lock. A compulsive ritual she couldn't seem to break. Watching the numbers climb, comments, shares, reactions, followers choosing sides. She couldn't stop looking, couldn't stop torturing herself with the evidence of her own destruction. Dina gently but firmly took the phone from her hands. No more, she said. This behavior isn't healthy. It's exactly what he wants. He wants you to spiral. Don't give him the satisfaction. The baby kicked, hard enough to make Carrie gasp and place both hands on her belly. You're right. She took a deep, shuddering breath. You're absolutely right. I have to think about Grace now. Everything I do, I have to think about her first. So what's your plan? What are you going to do about this? Carrie looked at her best friend, the woman who had been there since freshman orientation at Stanford, who had held her hair back when she got sick at her first college party, who had seen her at her absolute best and absolute worst, who had never once judged her. I'm going to survive, Carrie said slowly, her voice growing stronger with each word, and then I'm going to fight back. The doctor's appointment was scheduled for that same afternoon, an emergency visit squeezed in between regular appointments. Dr. Evelyn Shaw had rearranged her entire schedule to make room. The waiting room of the obstetrics practice was bright and cheerful. Pastel paintings of flowers and butterflies decorated the walls. Outdated magazines were fanned across the end tables. Happy pregnant women filled every available seat, rubbing their bellies and chatting with their supportive partners. Carrie sat alone in the corner. Her mother had offered to come. Her father had insisted on driving her. But she had wanted to do this by herself, needed to prove she could handle something without help. A nurse in cheerful pink scrubs called her name, led her down a hallway decorated with photos of newborns, showed her into an examination room. The blood pressure cuff squeezed her arm. The nurse frowned at the digital readout. That's concerning, she said, her voice carefully neutral. Let me get Dr. Shaw. Dr. Evelyn Shaw arrived within 3 minutes. A calm, competent woman in her mid-40s with warm brown eyes and steady, capable hands. The kind of doctor who inspired confidence just by walking into a room. "Tell me everything that's been happening," she said. She settled into the rolling stool beside the examination table. "I want to hear it all. Don't leave anything out." So Carrie told her, all of it, every terrible detail. The dog kennel in the thunderstorm, the mistress wearing her clothes and sleeping in her bed, the social media campaign painting her as mentally unstable, the stress that wouldn't stop building no matter what she did, the fear that she was slowly losing her mind, the terror that maybe, just maybe, Garrett was right about her. Dr. Shaw listened without interrupting. Her face remained neutral and professional throughout, but her eyes grew harder with each revelation. When Carrie finally finished, the doctor pulled out the portable ultrasound machine. "First things first," she said. "Let's check on your little one." The gel was shockingly cold on Carrie's exposed belly. The ultrasound wand pressed and moved across her stretched skin. The monitor flickered to life with grainy black and white images. And there she was. Grace. A perfect profile. Tiny nose, bow-shaped lips, heart beating strong and steady, 142 beats per minute. "She's absolutely perfect," Dr. Shaw said, her voice warm with genuine relief. "Completely healthy, strong heartbeat, good position. Everything looks exactly as it should." Tears of relief streamed down Carrie's face. She hadn't realized how terrified she had been, until that moment. Hadn't understood the weight she had been carrying. "But," Dr. Shaw's voice turned serious, "you are not okay, Carrie. Your blood pressure is dangerously elevated. You're showing signs of significant stress. The stress from everything that's happening. The stress is affecting both of you." Dr. Shaw took Carrie's hand in her own. "Whatever is going on in your personal life, your body is keeping score. If things don't change soon, we may need to consider early delivery. And at 33 weeks, that carries significant risks." Fear shot through Carrie's chest like ice water. "It's too soon," her voice shook. "She needs more time to develop, which is exactly why we need to get this situation under control." Dr. Shaw squeezed her hand. "You need rest, peace, support, a safe environment where you can focus on growing this baby. Can you get those things where you are currently staying?" Carrie thought about her childhood bedroom, her parents hovering anxiously over her every move, her phone buzzing constantly with the fallout from Garrett's campaign, the crushing weight of her destroyed life pressing down on her from every direction. "I can try," she said. Shaw studied her face for a long moment. Her professional mask slipped just enough to reveal genuine concern underneath. "Mrs. Ashford," she said finally, "Carrie, I've been practicing medicine for over 20 years. I've seen women in every possible kind of situation. Good marriages, bad marriages. Everything in between." She paused, chose her next words carefully. "What your husband is doing to you right now. What he's putting you through while you're carrying his child." She shook her head slowly. "It's abuse, plain and simple. Emotional abuse, psychological abuse. It doesn't have to leave bruises to cause permanent damage." The word landed like a physical blow. Abuse, Carrie had never used that word, not even in the privacy of her own thoughts. Garrett had never hit her, never raised a hand, never left marks that anyone could see. But abuse could be invisible. Abuse could be slow and subtle. Abuse could be years of isolation and dependence and manipulation that left you questioning your own reality. "You deserve so much better than this," Dr. Shaw continued. "Your daughter deserves better. Don't ever let anyone, including your husband, make you doubt that truth." Carrie stared at the ultrasound screen, at Grace's tiny hand opening and closing, at the miracle growing inside her that depended entirely on her strength. "I deserve better than this," she whispered, testing the words, feeling their weight. "She deserves better than this." Shaw smiled, sad, understanding, the smile of a woman who had seen too many patients in similar situations. "Yes," she said simply, "you absolutely do." That night, lying in her childhood bed with the moonlight streaming through the familiar curtains, Carrie made a decision. She was done being a victim. Done crying every night until her eyes were raw. Done questioning her own sanity and worth. Garrett wanted a war. Caroline Mitchell Ashford was going to give him one. Harold Jennings had practiced family law and divorce litigation for 31 years. His downtown office occupied the entire top floor of a historic building. Framed newspaper articles covered the walls. Landmark cases, precedent-setting rulings, victories that had changed state law. He had seen human cruelty in all its forms, had witnessed pettiness that defied belief, had watched men hide assets in their children's trust funds, had seen women destroy their husbands' careers out of pure spite. But in 31 years, he had never encountered anything quite like this. He made her sleep in a dog kennel. He read Rosemary's sworn statement aloud. His voice was flat, disbelieving, while 8 months pregnant, in a thunderstorm. With the family dogs. His senior legal assistant, a fierce woman named Patricia with steel gray hair and reading glasses perpetually perched on her nose, set down her coffee cup. The ceramic rang sharply against the saucer. "I would very much like to see that man burn," she said, her voice cold as a January morning. Jennings allowed himself a small, professional smile. It didn't reach his eyes. He turned to Carrie, who sat across from him in an expensive leather chair that probably cost more than her first car. Her hands were folded in her lap. Her face was pale but determined, the face of a woman who had passed through fire and emerged with steel in her spine. "Let's discuss asset discovery, Mrs. Ashford." The investigation launched within 48 hours. A small army of professionals descended on every aspect of Garrett Ashford's carefully constructed life. Forensic accountants traced the movement of every dollar. Private investigators documented every meeting, every phone call, every lie. Legal researchers excavated every filing, every contract, every partnership agreement buried in corporate archives. What they uncovered was both better and worse than anyone expected. Better because Garrett was not nearly as clever as he believed himself to be. Worse because his betrayal ran far deeper than Carrie had ever imagined possible. The offshore accounts were surprisingly easy to locate, a standard tax haven arrangement that any competent forensic accountant could unravel. Shell corporations in the Cayman Islands, trust accounts in the British Virgin Islands, investment vehicles in Luxembourg, approximately $8 million systematically hidden from their marital assets over a period of 4 years. The shell companies required slightly more effort to untangle. 3 limited liability corporations registered to fictional names and addresses, all carefully designed to obscure true ownership, all containing real estate properties and investment accounts that legally should have been considered community property. But the most devastating discovery came from an unexpected source. Preston Cole had been Garrett's business partner for 11 years, co-founder of Ashford Dynamics, a nervous, thin man with perpetually sweaty palms who always seemed to be looking over his shoulder for threats that weren't there. Preston Cole called Walter Mitchell directly. "I want to make a deal," he said without preamble. "I have information. I want protection." They arranged to meet at a private club downtown, the kind of place that didn't have prices on the menu because anyone who needed to ask couldn't afford to be there anyway. Dark wood paneling, deep leather chairs, the smell of expensive cigars and older money, a world apart from normal life. Preston's right knee bounced continuously under the mahogany table. His eyes darted around the empty room. His hands twisted the cocktail napkin into an origami disaster. "He's massively over-leveraged," Preston said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Has been for almost 2 years now. He borrowed against absolutely everything to finance the Brianna lifestyle. The beach house in Malibu, the jewelry collection, the sports cars, the Manhattan apartment she uses maybe twice a year." Walter sipped his bourbon with the unhurried patience of a man who knew time was on his side. How over-leveraged exactly? One major contract loss and the entire structure collapses. Preston mopped his glistening forehead with what remained of the napkin. "He's borrowing from new investors to pay existing obligations, using projected revenue from contracts that haven't been finalized. It's not technically a Ponzi scheme, but it's close enough that the SEC would have some very pointed questions." "Which specific contract?" Preston hesitated, looked around the empty room one more time as if expecting hidden listeners in every shadow. "The federal one," he finally admitted. "The military base expansion project, $53 million over 5 years. It's the cornerstone holding everything else together. If that contract goes away, the dominoes start falling within 60 days. Walter set down his crystal glass with a soft, deliberate click. I happen to know several people on that review committee. Preston nodded rapidly, too rapidly, his eyes bright with desperation and relief. That's exactly what I was hoping you would say. What do you want in exchange for this information? A longer pause this time. Preston's knee finally stopped bouncing. His face settled into something harder, more calculating than his nervous demeanor suggested. I want a clean exit, he said, complete separation from the company before everything implodes. My equity stake bought out at current fair market value, not post-collapse value, and absolute immunity from whatever investigations follow. Walter regarded him silently for a long moment. His weathered face revealed nothing. You knew what was happening, he said finally. The fraud, the hidden accounts, the treatment of my daughter. Preston stared at his hands, at the shredded cocktail napkins scattered across the polished table. I knew enough, he admitted. I should have spoken up months ago. Years ago, maybe. I was afraid of what he would do to me if I betrayed him. He looked up, met Walter's cold blue eyes. I was a coward, he said simply. Yes. Walter rose from his chair. You were. He buttoned his suit jacket with methodical precision, turned toward the private exit. I'll give you your deal, he said without looking back. But only because your information serves my purposes. Don't mistake my pragmatism for forgiveness. And don't expect gratitude. He left without waiting for a response. The dominoes began falling within 2 weeks. First came minor setbacks, supply chain disruptions, trucks that arrived mysteriously late, shipments that vanished into administrative limbo. Nothing catastrophic on its own, just inconvenient, expensive, time-consuming. Then personnel issues emerged. Key employees began receiving unsolicited job offers from competitors, senior engineers, experienced project managers, critical security specialists. One by one, they walked out the door to better opportunities. Then regulatory attention intensified. Building inspectors discovered concerning irregularities in the Henderson County development. Environmental review requests materialized from previously dormant agencies. Construction permits were suddenly delayed for additional documentation requirements. And finally, the federal contract. The review committee convened on a Thursday afternoon in a nondescript government office building. 7 career bureaucrats and political appointees around a conference table, reviewing competitive bids for the military base expansion project. Ashford Dynamics had been the presumptive winner for 8 months. Best price, best timeline, best documented track record, a near certainty in everyone's calculations. But suddenly, concerns emerged from multiple committee members. Questions about financial stability, worries about leadership continuity, rumors about ethical issues in company culture, whispered allegations of workplace misconduct. The contract went to a competitor by a vote of 5-2. Garrett's phone call to Carrie came that same evening. She was having dinner at her parents' house. Homemade chicken soup from her mother's treasured recipe. Crusty bread from the bakery downtown. Comfort food for an uncomfortable time. Her phone buzzed on the table. Unknown number. Private caller. She answered without thinking. Your father is responsible for this. Garrett's voice was ragged, raw, stripped of his usual smooth confidence. He's systematically destroying everything I've built. Carrie set down her soup spoon carefully, pushed back from the table, walked through the kitchen and out to the back porch, closed the sliding glass door behind her. The evening air was cool. Stars were beginning to emerge in the darkening sky. Crickets sang their eternal song in the garden. You destroyed yourself, Garrett. She was surprised by the steel she heard in her own voice. On the night you locked me outside with the tunes, you made that choice all by yourself. Everything I've built. His voice cracked. Everything I've worked my entire life for. You built nothing. The words emerged from somewhere deep inside her, somewhere she hadn't known existed until this moment. You inherited money from your grandfather's estate. You leveraged your father's business connections to get started. You've never actually worked a hard day in your entire privileged life. Stunned silence from the other end of the line. I was an architect before I met you, Carrie continued, the words flowing now like water from a broken dam. I designed buildings that will stand for 100 years. I created things that mattered, things that helped people. And I gave all of that up because you convinced me you wanted to take care of me. I did take care of you. You made me dependent. You systematically isolated me from everyone and everything I cared about. You controlled my access to money and transportation and communication. You made me believe I was nothing without you. She paused, gathered herself for the final truth. And when you got tired of me, you threw me away like garbage, like something worthless. You made your pregnant wife sleep in a dog kennel while your mistress took her place. More silence. Then a sound she hadn't expected at all, a sob. Carrie, please. His voice was broken now, shattered, all the arrogance stripped away. I made a terrible mistake. Brianna manipulated me. I was going through a midlife crisis. I wasn't thinking clearly. She actually laughed, a real laugh. The sound surprised her. A midlife crisis is buying an impractical sports car, Garrett. It's taking up rock climbing or learning to play guitar, not installing your mistress in our bedroom while your pregnant wife crawls through mud and rain to sleep with the dogs. I can fix this. His desperation was palpable even through the phone speaker. Just give me a chance. Let me make things right. No. The word hung in the air between them. Final, absolute, irreversible. I am done fixing things for you, Carrie said, her voice calm, steady, the voice of a woman who had found solid ground after drowning for years. I'm done making excuses for your behavior. I'm done believing your lies and manipulations. She took a deep breath of the cool evening air. You had 7 years to be a good husband. You had the chance to become a good father, and you chose her instead. You chose cruelty. You chose betrayal. You made your choice. Now live with the consequences. Carrie, wait. Goodbye, Garrett. She ended the call, stood on the porch for a long moment, let the evening breeze cool her flushed cheeks. Her hands were trembling slightly, but she was smiling. For the first time in weeks, she felt something other than grief and fear. She felt powerful. That night, Carrie slept more soundly than she had in months. No nightmares, no racing thoughts, no waking at 3 a.m. to replay her failures. Just darkness and peace, and the steady rhythm of her daughter's movements inside her, like a heartbeat, like a promise, like hope. The collapse of Garrett Ashford's empire made headlines on a Monday morning. Federal contract award bypasses tech darling Ashford Dynamics. The business section article detailed the review committee's unprecedented decision, questions about financial stability, concerns about leadership continuity, vague references to ethical considerations and cultural issues. No specific accusations were made, none were necessary. The implications were devastating enough. The stock price of Ashford Dynamics dropped 11% before the market closed that day. Institutional investors requested emergency conference calls. Banks initiated reviews of outstanding loan covenants. Business partners demanded immediate audits of shared accounts. By Wednesday evening, the bleeding had spread to every corner of Garrett's carefully constructed world. The luxury property development in Henderson County stalled indefinitely. Environmental impact review pending, construction crews dismissed until further notice. Subcontractors filing liens for work already completed but unpaid. The beach house in Malibu went on the market with an aggressive price reduction. Then the Manhattan pied-à-terre that Brianna used twice a year. Then the 60-foot yacht that Carrie hadn't even known existed until the forensic accountants found the ownership documents. Brianna Vale, ever the survivor, sensed the shifting wind before anyone else. She made her escape attempt on a Thursday afternoon while Garrett was occupied with emergency investor meetings. The jewelry disappeared first. Every piece Garrett had showered her with over the past 3 years. Diamond tennis bracelet, ruby drop earrings, sapphire pendant, emerald cocktail ring, all of it stuffed into a Louis Vuitton travel bag that technically still belonged to Carrie. Then the designer wardrobe, rack after rack of clothing she had accumulated. Handbags, shoes, accessories, anything that could be resold for quick cash. Finally, the white Mercedes convertible. She loaded everything into the trunk and back seat, programmed the GPS for Los Angeles International Airport, had a one-way first-class ticket to Miami already purchased on her phone. She made it as far as the departure terminal. The vehicle recovery specialists were waiting in the loading zone. 4 men in matching polo shirts with clipboards and official documentation. "Good afternoon, ma'am," the lead agent said politely. "We're going to need you to step out of the vehicle." Brianna's carefully maintained composure cracked like ice on a spring pond. "Do you have any idea who I am?" she demanded, her voice shrill, desperate. "Yes, ma'am, we certainly do." The agent consulted his clipboard with maddening calm. "You're the current possessor of approximately $340,000 worth of disputed assets. The jewelry in your bag, the vehicle you're driving, all of it is currently subject to legal holds pending divorce proceedings." Brianna's phone call to Garrett was audible from 50 feet away to everyone in the terminal. "Those were supposed to be joint assets," Garrett's voice screamed through the speaker. "You can't just steal everything and run. We had an agreement." "Watch me, honey." Brianna's voice dripped with concentrated venom. The final word transformed into a weapon. "You actually thought I stayed with you for your charming personality. You're delusional. I stayed for the lifestyle you promised. Since that lifestyle is clearly over, so are we." She threw the phone at the nearest recovery agent, missed by 3 feet, screamed obscenities as airport security approached to handle the disturbance. The divorce filing made the evening news. Tech CEO. His marriage implodes amid mounting financial troubles. Someone had leaked the most damaging details to every major outlet simultaneously. The dog kennel incident, the live-in mistress, the forced eviction of the pregnant wife, the systematic campaign of isolation and financial abuse spanning years. The court of public opinion reversed itself overnight. The same social media accounts that had praised Garrett's courage for dealing with an unstable wife now demanded accountability for his cruelty. The fake profiles and coordinated messaging disappeared without explanation. The manufactured consensus evaporated like morning fog. Real people emerged from the silence. "I always knew there was something deeply wrong with that man. That poor woman. 8 months pregnant. How could anyone do that? He deserves absolutely everything that's coming to him. I hope she takes him for every penny he has left." But Carrie found no satisfaction in watching the tide turn. No vindication in seeing her abuser exposed. No triumph in the public humiliation of the man who had humiliated her. She felt only exhaustion. Bone deep, soul deep. The kind of tired that sleep couldn't touch. She was now 37 weeks pregnant, technically full term, though the baby would benefit from every additional day of development. Her blood pressure remained concerningly elevated despite bed rest and stress reduction efforts. Dr. Shaw had prescribed modified activity, limited visitors, mandatory afternoon naps. Her parents hovered constantly, bringing food she struggled to eat, offering comfort she couldn't quite accept. Their worry was a tangible presence in every room. Her phone buzzed relentlessly. Notifications she had stopped checking, calls she had stopped answering. The outside world felt very far away. She spent hours lying in her childhood bed, staring at the ceiling, counting the hairline cracks in the old plaster, trying to recognize the woman she had become. The contractions started at 2:17 in the morning. She was in the bathroom at the time, a pregnancy-related need that happened constantly now. She sat on the edge of the tub afterward, too tired to immediately return to bed. Counting the tiles on the floor out of habit, 36 white tiles, 12 gray accent tiles, 8 small hexagonal tiles around the toilet base. The first contraction was mild, just a tightening sensation across her lower abdomen. She had been experiencing Braxton Hicks contractions for weeks, false labor, practice runs, nothing to worry about. But this one felt different somehow, more focused, more purposeful. She waited, counted, breathed. The second contraction came 7 minutes later. The third came 5 minutes after that. Her water broke while she was still sitting on the bathroom floor. The fluid pooled beneath her, warm, clear, unstoppable, soaking through her nightgown and spreading across the cold tiles. The baby was coming, and she was completely alone. Her father was in Dallas for an emergency business meeting, a crisis that couldn't wait until morning. He had kissed her forehead before leaving and promised to be back by noon the next day. Her mother was in the hospital recovering from emergency hip replacement surgery. A fall 3 days earlier, a broken bone that required immediate intervention. She wouldn't be discharged for another week at minimum. Dina was visiting her elderly grandmother in Arizona, a previously scheduled trip she had offered to cancel multiple times. Carrie had insisted she go. Rosemary had left the estate after her dramatic resignation. She was staying with her sister in Portland until things settled down. There was no one to call, no one to help, no one to hold her hand through what was about to happen. Carrie sat on the cold, wet bathroom floor, tiles pressing against her legs, contractions rolling through her body like waves breaking on a rocky shore. She was completely, utterly, terrifyingly alone. She found her phone on the counter where she had left it, called 911 with trembling fingers. "I need an ambulance." Her voice was surprisingly steady. "I'm in labor. I'm alone. My water just broke." The dispatcher was calm and professional, asked questions about timing and symptoms, confirmed the address, promised help was on the way. 9 minutes. That's how long it took for the ambulance to arrive. 9 minutes of breathing through the pain. 9 minutes of talking to her belly. 9 minutes of promising her daughter that everything would be okay even though she wasn't certain it would be. The paramedics were kind and efficient. Two women and a man, all in their 30s, all projecting competent reassurance. They helped her onto a stretcher, started an IV line, monitored her vital signs, asked about her medical history and due date and emergency contacts. "How far apart are the contractions now?" one of them asked. 3 minutes, Carrie managed, maybe closer. The ambulance doors closed. The siren wailed. The vehicle swayed as it navigated through dark, empty streets. Carrie stared at the ceiling of the ambulance, at the equipment racks, in the fluorescent lights, in the concerned faces of the paramedics. An oxygen mask was pressed gently over her nose and mouth. Cold, clean air flowed into her lungs. And finally, for the first time since that terrible night in the dog kennel, she allowed herself to cry. Not for the marriage, not for the house, not for the life she had lost. She cried for the naive girl she used to be, the girl who believed love conquered all, the girl who trusted without question, the girl who thought happily ever after was a guarantee if you just tried hard enough. That girl was gone forever. And Caroline Mitchell Ashford was finally ready to let her go. Grace Elizabeth Mitchell was born at 4:47 in the morning on a cool Thursday in late spring. 6 pounds, 8 ounces, 20 1/4 inches long, a perfect rosebud mouth that already seemed designed for demanding attention. 10 tiny fingers that immediately curled around anything they touched. 10 tiny toes that kicked with surprising strength. A full head of dark hair, still damp from delivery. She had her father's eyes, deep blue, intense, already seeming to observe everything around her with unsettling awareness. Carrie decided she would learn to love those eyes anyway. They belonged to Grace now, not to Garrett. They were her daughter's eyes, and that made them beautiful. The delivery had been fast once it started. 3 hours from arrival at the hospital to holding her daughter in her arms. The medical team was efficient and encouraging. The pain was overwhelming and transcendent. The moment Grace emerged into the world was unlike anything Carrie had ever experienced. A beginning, a transformation, a reason for everything. The nurse placed the baby on Carrie's bare chest, skin to skin, heart to heart, 2 heartbeats learning to synchronize in the dim light of the recovery room. The smell hit her first. That impossible to describe, impossible to forget scent of a newborn, clean and warm and somehow ancient. A smell that triggered something primal, protective, fierce. Then the weight. Such a small weight. Such an enormous presence. 6 pounds, 8 ounces of pure potential resting against her exhausted body. Then the sound. A tiny cry, not distressed, exploratory, a declaration of existence, an announcement of arrival, a first word in a conversation that would continue for the rest of their lives. "Hello, Grace." Carrie traced her daughter's impossibly soft cheek with one trembling finger. Memorized the curve of her nose, the shell of her ear, the tiny creases of her closed eyes. "I'm your mother." The baby's eyes open, dark blue, unfocused, searching for something she couldn't yet identify. "I know this world seems scary right now," Carrie whispered, her voice raw from the effort of delivery. "I know everything is new and loud and overwhelming." She pressed her cracked lips to Grace's warm forehead. "But I need you to understand something. I need you to know this from your very first day." She paused, let the promise form in her heart before speaking it aloud. I will never let anyone hurt you. Ever. No matter what it costs me. No matter what I have to sacrifice. You are the most important thing in my entire world, and I will spend the rest of my life making sure you know that." The baby yawned, her tiny mouth stretching wide, her eyes fluttering closed against the unfamiliar light, her body relaxing into the warmth of her mother's skin. And Carrie fell completely, irrevocably, unconditionally in love. The hospital room filled with unexpected visitors throughout the day. Rosemary arrived first, despite the 6-hour drive from Portland. She burst through the door, carrying homemade chicken soup in an insulated bag and hand-knitted booties in 3 different colors. "I quit yesterday," she announced without preamble. Walked right up to Mr. Ashford and told him exactly what I thought of him and his mistress and his dog kennel. She lowered herself into the chair beside Carrie's bed. "Should have done it months ago. Years ago, maybe. Better late than never." Carrie laughed, actually laughed, a sound she hadn't made in weeks. "Rosemary, you didn't have to give up your pension for me." "Yes, I absolutely did." The older woman reached over and gently stroked Grace's dark hair. "Some things matter more than retirement security. Some things matter more than money." Dr. Shaw stopped by after her morning rounds. She brought a cheerful flower arrangement and a card signed by the entire obstetrics department staff. "She's absolutely beautiful," Shaw said, gazing at Grace with professional approval. "Strong heartbeat, good reflexes, excellent color. She's going to be just fine." She looked at Carrie. "So are you," she added. "For what it's worth. I know it doesn't feel like it right now, but you're going to be okay. You're stronger than you realize." Patricia from the law office arrived in the late afternoon. She brought an elaborate gift basket full of baby supplies and a folder of documents that she handled with obvious satisfaction. The forensic accountants uncovered another offshore account, she reported quietly while Grace slept in the bassinet beside the bed. "Cayman Islands Trust. $2.3 million, he forgot to mention. Your settlement calculations are being revised upwards significantly." Even a woman Carrie had never met appeared in the doorway around sunset. She was elegant and thin, late 40s, an expensive haircut going silver at the temples, nervous hands that kept smoothing invisible wrinkles from her designer dress. "I'm Margot," she said hesitantly. "Garrett's first wife." Carrie blinked. "First wife. He told you I didn't exist, didn't he?" Margot smiled sadly. Her eyes were the tired eyes of someone who had carried a heavy secret for too long. "That's what he does. Erases the inconvenient parts of his history, makes himself the hero of every story." She stepped into the room, perched on the edge of the visitor's chair. "I heard about what he did to you," she continued, her voice barely above a whisper. "The kennel, the mistress, everything. It was on all the news programs. Why are you here?" Carrie meant the question to sound suspicious. It came out exhausted instead. Margot opened her leather handbag, pulled out a thick manila folder. "I have documentation," she said, "of everything he did to me during our marriage. The psychological manipulation, the financial control, the systematic isolation from friends and family, the gaslighting that made me question my own sanity." She placed the folder on the bedside table. "I was too afraid to use any of this during my own divorce," she admitted. "I just wanted to escape. Wanted to put the whole nightmare behind me and never look back." She met Carrie's eyes. "But you're different," she said. "You're fighting. You're standing up to him in ways I never could. And I realized that my silence enabled him to do the same thing to you that he did to me." She stood, smoothed her dress one final time. "Use whatever you find in there, however you need," she said. "And for what it's worth," her voice caught, "you're going to be okay. Better than okay, I promise." She left before Carrie could formulate a response. The folder sat on the bedside table for hours. Carrie wasn't ready to open it, wasn't ready to see the patterns, the repetition, the confirmation that she had been just another victim in a long line. The hospital room grew quiet as evening fell. The visitors departed one by one. The nurses reduced their check-in frequency. The hallways outside settled into nighttime stillness. Grace slept peacefully in the plastic bassinet beside the bed. Her tiny chest rose and fell in a hypnotic rhythm. Her tiny fists curled beside her face. Carrie watched her daughter sleep, watched the monitors blink and beep their reassuring green lights, watched the moonlight shift across the floor as hours passed. I thought I was alone, she whispered into the darkness. All those weeks, all those terrible nights, I thought I had nobody. But she had been wrong. She had people who loved her, people who would drive through the night to bring her soup, people who would quit their jobs on principle, people who would share their darkest secrets to help a stranger fight back. She was not alone. She had never been alone. She just hadn't been able to see it. The door opened softly around midnight. Garrett Ashford stood in the fluorescent hallway light. His suit was wrinkled. His eyes were bloodshot. His hair stood up at odd angles. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. I want to see my daughter. His voice was rough, demanding. The voice of a man accustomed to getting what he wanted. Carrie's hand moved instinctively to the call button on her bed rail. Security arrived within 90 seconds. Two large men in hospital uniforms with calm faces and capable hands. Garrett argued, shouted, threatened legal action. He was the biological father. He had constitutional rights. They had no authority to prevent him from seeing his own child. The security guards remained professionally unmoved. Sir, visiting hours ended at 9 o'clock. The larger of the two spoke with practiced patience. You need to leave the premises now. This isn't over. Garrett pointed a shaking finger at Carrie through the window. He looked deranged, desperate, nothing like the polished businessman she had married. You can't keep my daughter from me. I'll see you in court. The guards escorted him firmly toward the elevator. His voice echoed down the corridor, angry, frantic, diminished. Carrie watched through the window as he was removed from the building, watched him struggle ineffectively against the guards, watched him be pushed into the elevator, watched the doors close on his furious face. He looked smaller than she remembered, less impressive, less powerful. Just a man, just a small, cruel, broken man who had never learned that other people weren't toys to be used and discarded. He can't hurt us anymore, Carrie told her sleeping daughter. Never again. Grace stretched in her sleep. Her tiny hand opened and closed reflexively. Her rosebud lips moved in a sucking motion. And Carrie realized something profound. She wasn't afraid anymore. For the first time since that terrible night in the rain, she felt something other than fear and grief and rage. She felt free. The family court custody hearing convened on a gray Tuesday morning 6 weeks after Grace's birth. Carrie wore a conservative navy blue dress purchased specifically for this occasion. Professional, appropriate, the outfit of a responsible mother seeking protection for her child. She had lost most of the pregnancy weight. Her face was thinner than before. Her eyes had a new depth to them. The eyes of someone who had passed through fire and emerged transformed. Garrett wore a $3,000 custom-tailored suit that no longer fit quite right. He had lost significant weight as well, but not in a healthy way. His cheeks were hollow. His eyes darted constantly toward every door and window. His hands never stopped moving. His legal team occupied an entire row of chairs behind him. Bradford, the lead attorney, shuffled papers with aggressive confidence. 3 junior associates whispered amongst themselves. A paralegal typed furiously on a laptop. Harold Jennings sat alone at Carrie's table. He didn't need an army. He had the truth. Your Honor. Bradford rose before the judge had fully settled into the bench. We request an immediate dismissal of the petitioner's custody claims. Mrs. Ashford voluntarily abandoned the marital residence. She has no independent income. She has been residing in temporary housing since her departure. Abandoned, Jennings interrupted calmly. An interesting word choice. He stood slowly, adjusted his glasses, approached the bench with the unhurried confidence of a man holding winning cards. Your Honor, my client was forcibly removed from her home at 8 months pregnant. She was made to sleep in an outdoor dog kennel during a thunderstorm. We have sworn testimony from multiple witnesses to these events. The judge's eyebrows climbed toward her hairline. A dog kennel. Yes, Your Honor. Jennings handed a document to the court clerk. The testimony begins with the household staff who witnessed the incident firsthand. Rosemary Dalton took the stand first. She had dressed carefully for this moment. Her best church dress, pearl earrings her mother had given her decades ago, her silver hair carefully styled. Her hands trembled slightly as she placed them on the Bible, but her voice was rock steady. I've worked for the Ashford family for 15 years, she began. I watched Mrs. Ashford plan her wedding in that house. I made her ginger soup when she had terrible morning sickness. I was there the night Mr. Ashford locked her outside. She described everything in careful, damning detail. The rain hammering the windows, the doghouse she had found Carrie in the next morning, Brianna Vale lounging in the master bedroom, wearing Carrie's clothes and drinking from Carrie's favorite mug. She described the signal blocker that prevented emergency calls, the confidentiality agreement she had been forced to sign, the threats against her pension and reputation. I should have done something sooner, Rosemary concluded, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. I was afraid for my own security. I was a coward. But I'm telling the truth now. Bradford's cross-examination was aggressive but ineffective. Isn't it true you were terminated from your position for theft? He demanded. No, Rosemary's chin lifted. I resigned because I couldn't work for a man who treats pregnant women like animals. Margot testified next. She presented her documentation methodically, emails demonstrating patterns of controlling behavior, text messages showing psychological manipulation, medical records documenting stress-related symptoms during their marriage, a paper trail of abuse spanning years. He did the same thing to me, Margot said simply. Different specific details, same underlying playbook. Isolate, control, gaslight, discard. Bradford attempted to discredit her. You're a bitter ex-wife, he suggested. You've harbored resentment against Mr. Ashford for years. I've harbored the truth for years. Margot's voice was ice. There's a significant difference. Patricia presented the financial evidence. 3 years of meticulously documented records spread across the courtroom table. Offshore accounts, shell corporations, hidden real estate holdings, money systematically removed from marital assets. Mr. Ashford transferred approximately $11.3 million out of community property over a 4-year period, Patricia explained. He accomplished this through fraudulent paperwork, fictitious business entities, and deliberate concealment. The judge examined the documents with growing incredulity. Is any of this accurate, Mr. Ashford? Bradford stood quickly. Your Honor, those assets were business-related. They have no relevance to personal custody matters. They were accumulated during the marriage. Patricia's response was immediate. They are subject to equitable distribution, regardless of how they were categorized or hidden. The final witness was entirely unexpected. Brianna Vale walked into the courtroom in designer heels that wobbled slightly with each step. Her clothes were expensive, but no longer new. Her makeup was perfect, but couldn't quite hide the exhaustion underneath. She had been served a subpoena the day before, had no choice but to appear. Bradford objected strenuously. Your Honor, this witness has absolutely no relevance to custody proceedings. On the contrary, Jennings smiled his cold, professional smile. She has direct, first-hand knowledge of Mr. Ashford's character and behavior during the time period in question. The judge allowed the testimony. Brianna settled into the witness chair, crossed her legs, looked directly at Garrett for the first time since entering the room. Her expression was unreadable. He promised me everything, she said without preamble. The house, the lifestyle, a future together. Instead, he's given me nothing except legal bills and public humiliation. Why are you here today, Miss Vale? Jennings asked the question gently. Because I have nothing left to lose. Brianna's smile was sharp as broken glass, and because he deserves everything that's about to happen to him. Can you describe what you witnessed on the night of February 3rd of this year? Brianna took her time answering. Let the silence stretch. I was standing in the master bedroom window, she finally said, looking out at the backyard. It was raining very hard. Mrs. Ashford was outside in the storm, 8 months pregnant, crawling into the dog kennel because she had nowhere else to go. She paused, and Garrett was standing beside me, watching through the same window. Another pause. Longer this time. He was laughing. The courtroom fell absolutely silent. Even the junior associates stopped whispering. Even Bradford's pen stopped moving. The judge removed her glasses, rubbed the bridge of her nose with visible weariness. I've heard more than enough, she said. The ruling was delivered within the hour. Full legal and physical custody to Caroline Mitchell. Supervised visitation only for the father. Contingent on successful completion of psychological evaluation and parenting classes. Child support calculated from documented income at pre-collapse levels. The marital residence was awarded to Caroline as compensation for documented financial abuse and trauma. Legal fees were assigned entirely to the respondent. Carrie sat in her car in the courthouse parking garage afterward, Grace sleeping peacefully in her car seat in the back, the legal documents resting on the passenger seat beside her. She had won, against all odds, against all the money and lawyers and manipulation. She had actually won. But it didn't feel like victory. Didn't feel like vindication or triumph or revenge. It felt like something quieter than that. It felt like freedom. It felt like the first real breath she had taken in years. It felt like the beginning of whatever came next. 6 months later, Garrett Ashford filed for bankruptcy. Chapter 7, Complete Liquidation of All Assets. The most devastating form of financial failure available under federal law. The newspapers covered the story with barely concealed satisfaction. Tech millionaire loses everything after pregnant wife scandal. Former rising star faces total financial collapse. Dog kennel divorce results in complete ruin. Carrie read the articles on her laptop while Grace napped on her chest. Her daughter's weight warm and solid and comforting. Her daughter's breath soft against her collarbone. She waited to feel something. Satisfaction. Vindication. The sweet taste of long-delayed revenge. Instead, she felt hollow. She called Dina that afternoon. "I thought I would be happy," she admitted, watching him lose everything the way I lost everything. Seeing his entire world collapse, and it just feels empty. Carrie watched Grace sleep, like watching a stranger's car accident on the highway. Like something that has nothing to do with my actual life anymore. Dina was quiet for a moment on the other end of the line. "That's called healing, honey," she finally said. "He's not the center of your universe anymore. You've moved on to better things." The words hit Carrie with unexpected force. She had moved on. The consuming rage that had sustained her through the worst months had faded to distant embers. The grief that had threatened to drown her had receded like a tide going out. The constant, grinding pain of betrayal had softened into something bearable, something survivable, something almost forgotten. She looked at her daughter, Grace's dark curls, Grace's perfect cheeks, Grace's tiny hands curled into fists even in sleep. This was her world now. This small, precious person, this unexpected gift, this reason for everything. Garrett Ashford was just a footnote in the story of her life, a cautionary tale, a lesson learned. Everything else was just ashes. Carrie sold the mansion 2 weeks later. The decision came easily, almost automatically. She didn't need $12 million worth of painful memories. Didn't need the master bedroom, where Brianna had lounged in stolen robes. Didn't need the nursery designed by her husband's mistress. Didn't need the kennel where she had learned what hitting bottom really felt like. The proceeds went into a trust fund for Grace, for college, for emergencies, for a future Carrie was determined would be better than the past. She bought a new house instead. 4 bedrooms, nothing excessive, a big backyard with mature oak trees perfect for climbing, a wraparound porch where her mother could rock Grace on warm summer evenings, a home office where Carrie could work once she figured out what she wanted to do with the rest of her life. The first night in the new house, she opened a bottle of good wine, her first since before the pregnancy, a Cabernet Sauvignon from a Napa Valley vineyard she and Dina had visited years ago. She sat on the back porch steps as the sun descended toward the horizon. The sky shifted through shades of orange and gold and deep purple. Stars emerged one by one in the darkening vault. The air smelled like fresh-cut grass and the honeysuckle growing wild along the back fence. Bruno and Max sprawled at her feet. She had claimed them after the bankruptcy liquidation. They had always been more her dogs than Garrett's anyway. They had kept her warm in the kennel. They had never betrayed her. The wine tasted like endings and beginnings mixed together. Bittersweet and complex and exactly right. "You know," she said to no one in particular, "I used to think he took everything from me." Bruno's ear twitched at the sound of her voice. Max opened one eye, confirmed no treats were being offered, and closed it again. Carrie looked up at the emerging stars, the same stars that had shone over the dog kennel on that terrible night, the same constellations her grandmother had taught her to identify as a child. Turns out he just cleared the space for everything that actually matters. The baby monitor on the step beside her crackled with sound. Grace's awakening cry, a hungry cry, a summoning cry, a mother is needed cry. Carrie smiled, finished the last of her wine in one long swallow, went inside to feed her daughter. A week later, Garrett appeared without warning. Carrie was working in the front garden, planting fall flowers in the beds along the walkway, chrysanthemums and asters in decorative kale, colors that would brighten the approaching cool weather. Grace watched from a blanket spread on the grass nearby. 9 months old now, sitting up on her own, babbling constantly in a language only she understood. A car pulled up to the curb. Rental plates, economy model. Nothing like the Mercedes or Tesla or imported sports cars of his former life. Garrett climbed out slowly. He looked diminished, thinner, older. His clothes were department store generic rather than custom Italian tailoring. His watch was gone, probably sold to pay legal bills months ago. His hair was slightly too long, as if professional haircuts were now a luxury he couldn't afford. I made terrible mistakes. He stood at the bottom of her porch steps, didn't dare approach closer. Brianna manipulated me. I was experiencing some kind of midlife crisis. I wasn't thinking clearly. Carrie stood up slowly, brushed potting soil from her gardening gloves. Stop talking. Her voice was calm, controlled, without anger or grief or any of the emotions she once would have expected to feel in this moment. You locked your pregnant wife in a dog kennel. She pulled off her gloves, one finger at a time. You laughed while I crawled through the mud and rain to shelter with the animals. You chose public humiliation when you could have chosen private honesty. She dropped the gloves on the porch railing. You don't get to rewrite history just because it's convenient for you now. I've lost everything. His voice cracked. The cracks of a man who had never learned how to lose anything. She looked at him, really looked, saw the desperation underneath the familiar features, the fear, the dawning realization that his usual manipulations weren't working anymore. No, she said simply, you haven't lost everything. She gestured around her, at the modest house, at the simple garden, at her daughter playing on a second-hand blanket. You still have your health, your intelligence, your education, your ability to start over and build something real. She picked up Grace, held her daughter close. That's considerably more than you left me with on that night in February. She turned toward the door. Carrie, please. She stopped, looked back one final time. The prison door was never locked, Garrett. The bars were never real. I was my own warden, and I finally set myself free. She went inside, closed the door, didn't look back. That night, lying in her new bed in her new house, Carrie realized she had said everything she needed to say. There would be no dramatic confrontation, no satisfying moment of revenge, no public reckoning where Garrett finally understood the full extent of what he had done. There didn't need to be. She was free of him, free of the anger, free of the obsession with justice and payback that had consumed her for so long. She was simply, finally, completely free, and that freedom was worth more than any revenge could ever be. 2 years passed, 2 years of slow healing, 2 years of small victories, 2 years of building something new from the wreckage of something old. Carolyn Mitchell Shaw opened her own architectural firm on a sunny morning in late spring. She had taken her mother's maiden name after the divorce was finalized. Shaw. A fresh start, a clean slate, a woman reborn from the ashes of who she used to be. Shaw Designs began modestly, a converted storefront in a revitalizing downtown neighborhood. 2 employees besides herself. A receptionist named Maria, who made excellent coffee. A junior architect named James, who was eager to learn. The work started small, residential renovations mostly. Kitchen remodels for young families, bathroom updates for empty nesters, accessible modifications for aging parents. Nothing glamorous, nothing award-winning. Just solid work for real people with real needs. But word spread, slowly at first, then faster. Carrie's designs were thoughtful, personal. She listened to what clients actually wanted rather than imposing her own vision. She created spaces that felt like home because she understood, deeply and viscerally, what it meant to not have one. The firm grew. 3 employees became 6. 6 became 12. The converted storefront became a proper office suite in a renovated historic building. Then the accessibility projects found her. An elderly couple in a modest suburb needed their beloved home modified for wheelchair access. The wife had suffered a stroke. The husband refused to put her in a facility. They wanted to age in place together until the end. Carrie threw herself into the project with a passion that surprised even herself. She researched best practices obsessively, consulted with occupational therapists and physical therapists, designed solutions that were both functional and beautiful. The couple cried when they saw the final result, cried with gratitude and relief and joy. More referrals followed. A veteran with mobility challenges, a family with a child who used a wheelchair, an elderly widower who needed handrails and wider doorways to maintain his independence. These projects aren't particularly profitable, her business manager warned. We're losing money on several of them. Carrie smiled the smile of a woman who had learned what really mattered. Then we'll make it up on the custom homes. Some things are more important than profit margins. The firm's reputation grew. Shaw Designs became known for innovative, compassionate work. Awards followed, magazine features, industry recognition. But the moment Carrie treasured most happened on an ordinary Tuesday afternoon. Grace took her first steps in the office, 14 months old, dark curly hair that refused to stay in pigtails. Her father's blue eyes, which Carrie had learned to love completely. A personality that was already fierce and determined and absolutely her own. She pulled herself up on the coffee table in the client waiting area, steadied herself with both small hands, looked around the room with the expression of a tiny conquistador surveying new territory. Then she let go. One wobbling step, then another, then three more in rapid succession. Then she walked straight into her mother's outstretched arms. The entire staff erupted in cheers and applause. Rosemary, now the office manager, captured the moment on her phone through happy tears. "That's my brave, strong, beautiful girl." Carrie's voice was thick with emotion. "That's my Grace." The toddler laughed and squirmed and demanded to be set down so she could try again. 6 months later, Garrett remarried. Carrie heard about it through mutual acquaintances who seemed to think she would want to know. A woman named Stacy, blonde, significantly younger, apparently eager to be associated with whatever remained of the Ashford name. Except Garrett wasn't a wealthy tech entrepreneur anymore. He was a sales manager at a mid-level software company, rebuilding slowly from the wreckage of his former life, living in a rented condo in a suburb he once would have considered beneath him. The marriage lasted 11 months. Carrie heard about the divorce through the same mutual acquaintances, irreconcilable differences according to the official filing. The unofficial version involved late nights at the office, secretive phone calls, a pattern of behavior that seemed tragically, predictably familiar. She felt a flicker of something when she heard the news. Not sympathy, not satisfaction, just recognition. "He'll keep making the same choices," she told Dina over coffee at their favorite downtown cafe, "until he decides to become someone different. Think he ever will?" Carrie considered the question, turned it over in her mind like a stone smoothed by running water. "No," she said finally. "Some people are meant to be lessons, not landmarks. You're not supposed to stay with them forever. You're supposed to learn from them and move on to better things." "That's deep." Dina smiled over the rim of her cup. "I've had a lot of time to think." Grace turned 3 on a perfect Saturday afternoon in late May. The backyard of Carrie's modest house transformed into a wonderland. Balloons in every color, streamers twisting in the gentle breeze. A bounce house that dominated half the lawn. A gentle old pony named Butterscotch giving patient rides in careful circles. Children filled every corner. Neighbors' kids, friends from the daycare, cousins visiting from out of state. Laughter rose like music into the cloudless sky. Grace wore a princess dress her grandmother had sewn by hand. A crown of fresh flowers sat slightly crooked on her dark curls. Chocolate frosting already decorated her chin and both cheeks. She raced from activity to activity. The bounce house, the pony, the face painting station, the bubble machine. A tiny tornado of pure, uncontainable joy. "She's so happy," Rosemary observed, standing beside Carrie on the wraparound porch. "Such a happy child." "She is." Carrie watched her daughter convince 2 older children to play her made-up game. She had no idea what the rules were, but Grace was clearly winning. "So are you." Rosemary's voice was soft, Happy, I mean. Finally. Carrie considered the observation. I am, she said with mild surprise. I actually am. The admission felt strange, unexpected. After everything that had happened, after the dog kennel and the betrayal and the public humiliation and the legal battles, after losing her marriage and her home and her entire sense of identity, she was genuinely, authentically happy. Not the naive happiness of her youth, not the blind trust she had once mistaken for contentment. Something deeper, harder earned, more real. Something that couldn't be taken away because it came from inside her rather than from outside circumstances. The letter arrived in the mail the following week. Carrie found it mixed in with the usual bills and catalogs and charity solicitations. No return address on the expensive cream envelope, her name written in unfamiliar handwriting. She opened it at the kitchen table while Grace ate breakfast. Cheerios scattered across the high chair tray like fallen stars. Bruno waiting underneath for dropped cereal. Max snoring on his bed by the back door. Dear Carrie, I've started this letter dozens of times over the past 2 years. I was never sure if I should actually send it. But I've finally reached a point where I need to say these things, whether you want to hear them or not. I'm in therapy now, real therapy. Not the kind where you pay someone to validate your choices. The kind where you face the ugliest parts of yourself and try to understand how you became that person. I've been thinking a lot about that night. The dog kennel, the rain, you crawling through the mud while I watched from your bedroom window. I told myself it was okay at the time, that you deserved it somehow, that I was better than you and therefore my happiness mattered more than your suffering. I was completely, devastatingly wrong. I don't expect your forgiveness. I'm not entirely sure I deserve it, but I wanted you to know something important. Your grace in that courtroom changed something fundamental in me. When you had every reason and every opportunity to destroy me, you simply told the truth. No embellishment, no dramatic accusations, just the facts of what I did and what I saw. That restraint, that dignity, hurt more than any attack could have. It forced me to see myself clearly for the first time in my entire life. I'm trying to become different now, trying to be honest with myself about who I really was and who I want to be instead. Trying to understand how I became someone capable of such casual cruelty. I'm not there yet. There. I may never fully arrive, but I'm walking in that direction, one difficult step at a time. For what it's worth, which may be nothing at all, I'm sorry. Truly and deeply sorry. Not because I faced consequences, not because I lost the lifestyle I enjoyed, but because what I did to you was wrong. And I finally understand that. You didn't deserve any of what happened to you. Neither did your daughter. I hope you're both living beautiful lives. Brianna Carey read the letter twice. Then she folded it carefully along its original creases, placed it in her desk drawer with other documents from that chapter of her life. She didn't know what to do with it. Forgiveness seemed premature, but anger felt exhausting and pointless. So she simply acknowledged its existence, filed it away, let it be what it was without requiring response or resolution. Some things didn't need to be fixed or resolved or processed into neat conclusions. Some things just needed to exist, and that was enough. That evening, golden light slanting through the windows, Carrie carried Grace out onto the wraparound porch. The sunset painted the world in shades of amber and rose and deep violet. The oak trees cast long shadows across the freshly cut lawn. Fireflies began their nightly performance, blinking green against the gathering darkness. Bruno and Max chased each other in circles around the yard. Old dogs now, gray around their muzzles, but still young enough to play when the mood struck. Grace squirmed in her mother's arms, pointed at the fireflies with a frosting, sticky finger. Bugs, Mama. Glowy bugs. Lightning bugs. Carrie smiled. They're called lightning bugs. Want to catch them, maybe in a few minutes. Let's watch the sunset first. They sat together on the porch swing, rocking gently, watching the sky change colors, listening to the crickets begin their evening chorus. Mama's house, Grace said suddenly. She pointed at something through the window. Carrie looked. An architectural model sat on the table just inside, a custom home she was designing for a client. Something beautiful and functional and uniquely suited to their needs. That's right, baby girl. Carrie pulled her daughter closer, breathed in the smell of baby shampoo and birthday cake frosting. Mama's house. Mama's company. Mama's life. She had built all of this, every piece from the absolute bottom, from sleeping in a dog kennel to owning her own business, from being discarded like garbage to creating something meaningful. She had survived the unsurvivable, rebuilt from the ruins, found her way back to herself. I used to think he took everything from me, Carrie murmured into Grace's curly hair. But she understood the truth now. She had learned it slowly, painfully, through years of recovery and growth. Garrett hadn't taken anything permanent. He had tried. He had failed. Because the things that truly mattered couldn't be stolen or destroyed. Her strength, her resilience, her capacity for love and growth, her ability to create beautiful things, those had always belonged to her. Those had always been hers. He had just made her forget for a while. Turns out he just cleared the space for everything that matters. The screen door creaked shut behind them. The fireflies danced. Grace yawned and nestled closer. The dogs flopped onto the porch with twin sighs of contentment. The stars emerged one by one in the darkening sky, and Caroline Mitchell Shaw, architect, mother, survivor, held her daughter close and watched the night arrive. She had walked through fire and emerged transformed, had lost everything and found something better, had been broken into pieces and put herself back together into a stronger shape. The story wasn't about revenge anymore. It wasn't about justice or vindication or making someone pay for their cruelty. The story was about grace, the grace she had been named for, the grace she was raising, the grace she had finally learned to give herself. And that grace was enough, more than enough. It was everything. If stories like this speak to your soul, hit that subscribe button and tap the bell so you never miss another one. Drop a comment telling me what you would have done in Caroline's situation. And if you know someone who needs to hear this story today, share it with them. Now let's begin.